Hello, welcome back to Scriptural Analysis, the Law of the Covenant. This is Video 3, Part 9, the Abrahamic Covenant. The purpose of this video will be to provide a brief outline of some, and I repeat, some of the times Abraham was privy to Jehovah's counsel. Let's pause here for a moment. I say some because there are many different writings concerning Abraham from many different sources. As such, I will weave together some of the records that identify themselves with Abraham's history. During the course of this video, I will not state the origin of the specific listed adventure so that the viewer can just listen to what is presented. However, in the summary of the Abrahamic Covenant series, I will state the source and where it can be found in case the viewer wants to read the sourced material with a new insight regarding God's governance in this history. Okay. Let's carry on with the examples. Number 1. Jehovah promises Abraham protection for him and his posterity in the idolatrous land of Canaan, and informs Abraham that God will give this land unto him and his posterity. Jehovah provides Abraham with a vision, which is akin to a higher education, and instructs him to go unto the Egyptians to teach them that which Abraham was allowed to understand. Jehovah knew that the knowledge in the hands of the Egyptians would then be passed on to the future world powers, the Greeks, the Romans, Great Britain, etc., thus preserving this knowledge for the assistance of future generations and nations. Some of this knowledge included an incredibly in-depth understanding of the science of astronomy, mathematics, the concept of a pre-earth life, the governance of God, the origin of Egypt after the floodwaters receded, and so forth. Through this experience, Abraham and his wife Sarai were protected by covenant blessings while in the presence of an idolatrous Pharaoh, who himself, liking Sarai, and thinking she was just Abraham's sister, made sure to provide good accommodations while they stayed in Egypt. Number 2. Pharaoh eventually found out about Sarai being Abraham's wife and asked them to go on their way. However, by this time, Abraham had imparted all knowledge to the academic class of Egypt, so his mission there was complete. Abraham and all that he was in possession of had grown during the time in Egypt, and so on his return to Canaan, Abraham discovered that the land was not able to bear both his numerous cattle and those of his brother Lot. As such, Abraham demonstrates his real character and counsels with his brother Lot, offering first choice of all the lands to him and his herdsmen, stating that he, Abraham, will take what his brother does not want. And the land was divided between them unselfishly and with a love of charity. The land of Canaan, although promised to Abraham from Jehovah as a possession for him and his posterity at some future point, was already populated with cities and governed by many districts of kings. It is interesting to note that Abraham never did legally own any of this land during his lifetime, relegating himself to living in a peaceful agreement with the various kings and princes who respected Abraham and were willing to provide a certain level of hospitality for him on their lands. Nevertheless, Abraham trusted in Jehovah, having faith in his promise of inheritance, and lived his life in a tent, away from the distractions of the cities and their false economic systems, choosing instead to ensure life sustenance on the land for him, his family, and his servants, of whom Abraham would teach the governance of God. Number 3. Lot, having an interest in the cities and their way of life, chose to live close to the action of Babylon the world, and as such, found himself trying the patience of Jehovah by pushing the boundaries of the terms of the covenant. As such, a few instances required Abraham to provide assistance to Lot and his family in the role of a savior-type individual. This is an important type and will be discussed in the summary video of this series. The first savior-type role for Abraham involved an incident where 5 eastern kings swooped down on the towns where Lot lived close to invade them for not paying tribute to them. Lot was a wealthy cattle baron, and so he was a great prize for the invading kings. He was captured with all his wealth and was forced to march back towards the eastern king's land as a prisoner. Abraham, his servants, and the 3 Amorite princes of the land Abraham was staying in marched to reverse this circumstance. Lot, who was a covenant holder loyal to his brother Abraham, was in dire need of assistance. And Abraham, who was the eldest and a covenant holder loyal to Jehovah, would not stand for this act of warring intrusion. Having knowledge that Jehovah would maintain his covenant promise as long as he honored the terms, Abraham led the charge to rescue those taken. The subsequent battle with the 5 eastern kings saw Abraham fulfill his mission to rescue those taken by the hostile invaders, destroying the kings and their armies and returning the possessions and people back into the land. This victory was met with great joy in the lands where the eastern kings came to conquer. Abraham was met by the king of this land upon his return, and was praised and offered all the spoils by this king. However, Abraham would have nothing granted to him from this king, not wanting the king to take credit for all that Abraham would accomplish in the future, and having the opportunity to say, "Look, people, it is I, the king, that has made Abraham rich." No, Abraham would live his life in the honor of God and stay away from the systems of the world around him. Thus, credit would only ever be to God for his sustenance and achievements. It is mentioned that after this battle, Abraham does get recognition from Melchizedek, however, as he reminds Abraham of his receiving covenant blessings in this experience, saying, "Blessed be Abraham of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand," thus denoting divine protection in winning the life and death battle. Abraham was not a warring individual. Rather, he sought to be a peacemaker. However, even peacemakers have to stand against predatory forces that impose upon family and good people of society to maintain that which they know to be right. And so he did. Lot is saved and continues his flirtation with the city by staying in Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham goes back to live on the plains. Number 4. It is during life on these plains that Abraham reflects upon all that he has known. Here he wonders regarding that which Jehovah has taught him and promised him, and here Jehovah provides him with the answers to that which he seeks. Abraham finds out about his posterity receiving this land when they would come out of slavery, referring to leaving Egypt some 550 years later. We can read this in the King James Version of the Bible in Genesis chapter 15, verses 12 to 14, which says, "And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abraham, and lo, an aura of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abraham, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance." Number 5. Abraham would honor Sarai's request and receive Sarai's handmaiden Hagar by her for the purpose of marriage. This union would produce a son named Ishmael, whom Abraham loved and was his first child. Number 6. And after following Jehovah's command to undergo a practice of circumcision, Abraham and his wife Sarai received a new name. Abram became Abraham, meaning father of many nations, and Sarai became Sarah, meaning princess of nations. Both are then visited of 3 angels to their household. These angels, of interest to note, do not come in a status of glory, but rather that of ordinary travelers, and inform Abraham of their mission to go and destroy the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. They also share with Abraham of his future son, born to him and Sarah. News of both of these events come as a shock to the aged husband and wife. Number 7. Abraham, knowing of Jehovah's plan to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, finds himself again having to employ a savior-type proxy for his brother Lot, who, as bad luck would have it, actually lives in Sodom and Gomorrah with his family. Abraham inquires of the Lord in negotiation as to what can be done to save Sodom and Gomorrah. This begins a bargaining discussion that Jehovah agrees to hear from Abraham, as Abraham seeks to lower the number of righteous souls required to save the city. Together, they settle on 10 souls. But unknown to Abraham, there would not even be that many present in the city, and the destruction was set. However, because of a principle of proxy protection, a worthy covenant holder can petition to save their family who may be living a lesser law in a lesser kingdom by the terms of a certain law of the covenant, which will be discussed in later videos. Lot and his daughters were saved from the destruction, thanks only to Abraham's ability to live the terms of the covenant, and Jehovah making it possible for such an arrangement. Lot's wife, however, was not as fortunate. The authors state her inability to follow exact counsel and maintain the terms required for their receiving divine protection, and thus her personal saving cost her her mortal life. Number 8. After the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham moves to Gerar in the land of the Philistines, a land where there was no fear of God, for the people living there did not follow such teachings. Abraham and Sarah were in need of protection because in this land the king, named Abimelech, could take what he wished and would determine life and death how he saw fit. And like the Pharaoh of Egypt, he too was intrigued by Sarah, who must have been a beautiful woman, because at this time she was approaching 90 years of age. Jehovah, bound by his promise of P cubed, ensured Abraham and Sarah received the protection needed, and their ordeal with King Abimelech ended, with them actually getting a promise from the king to live on his land wherever they chose, along with a few temporal gifts, due to the king receiving a message from an angelic visitor. Number 9. Sarah gives birth to Isaac, her first and only son with Abraham. Abraham is 100 years old at this time, and Sarah is 90. What should be a wonderful time becomes a human tragedy, as Sarah and Hagar do not get along, and there is competition amongst them regarding their children's status with Abraham. Eventually, Sarah sends Hagar and her son away. It is interesting to note that the authors included that it was Sarah that instituted the right for Abraham to take Hagar to wife to produce an heir, and it was Sarah again that instituted the removal of Hagar and Ishmael from their presence. Abraham did not lead either of these events. But to make this more palatable for Abraham, Jehovah promises Abraham that, like Isaac, Ishmael will eventually produce a nation. But Jehovah confirms that through Isaac shall Abraham's posterity receive of the covenants made. Number 10. Abraham commanded of Jehovah, and he was to slay his son Isaac as an offering upon the altar. In perhaps what could be described as one of Abraham's greatest trials, to offer his son that he waited so long to have as an offering to honor God, Abraham did not falter, negotiate, or rebel. He simply carried on with the real plans necessary to strictly observe the command that Jehovah had given him regarding his son. This command was so far outside of everything that Jehovah had ever instructed Abraham on, that it could be possible Abraham recognized it for what it was, a supreme test of loyalty for both him as well as Isaac, or maybe just for Isaac. After all, the covenant promises absolutely do need to be secured by strict loyalty and observance to the terms initiated by God. Abraham understood this and had grown in status to know that God knew best, and according to the authors, both him and Isaac were absolutely compliant with the commandment and prepared for the outcome. The authors relate that it was not until Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son did Jehovah's servant command him to stop, and Isaac was released, with a ram provided unto them in a nearby thicket for sacrifice instead. Isaac and Abraham had proven their loyalty to Jehovah and secured for themselves the promises made. These 10 events show a pattern of protection in Abraham's life as he followed God's commandments, irrespective of what was being asked of him. Abraham was fully aware of the greatness of God's plan for humanity and was willing to do all things required to maintain his Savior-type status for his posterity. The authors have provided an interesting history, one rich with deep education surrounding the events in his life and laying a foundation for which the reader can analyze for consistency throughout the book and also compare with other writings not found in the Holy Bible to check for similar patterns and consistencies. The final summary video for the Abrahamic covenant will seek to point out the author's literary gems that point all readers in the direction taken by Abraham to receive those promises, and how the readers can, by emulation, receive these promises as well. Thanks for tuning in. I look forward to you joining me for Video 3, Part 10, a summary video reiterating some of the important teachings from the writings focusing on what we should understand from the author's history of Abraham and how it applies to us in God's governance structure. Until next time, take care and contemplate these things.